Good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for the workshop on awarding academic credit for industry credentials. My name is Erica Oriens, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Student Success at the Michigan Community College Association. I'm joined today by my colleague, Donna Petrus, who is our project consultant and has been supporting the MCCA in this work for a number of years, and this particular topic for the last few months. I have some slides to share, which are also available for review on the MCCA website after today. We will also have a recording available of this webinar if you'd like to share that with any of your colleagues or review it after today. We have a very packed agenda in the hour that we have together. We'd like to open it up with a welcome and introductions. We will review our goal for this project, and then we'll start focusing on how community colleges and universities can manage the new equivalency, industry recognized credential equivalency functionality in the Michigan Transfer Network. We'll talk about our next steps and timeline for implementation, and leave some time at the end for questions and discussion. If you wouldn't mind, while we start reviewing our goal, if you could please add your name, title, and institution in the chat, along with one industry credential. And I said here that your institution awards. What I really should have said is that your institution prepares students for, because of course the credential is typically awarded by industry, but just name one of those that your industry awards, and we'll come back to this at the end of the webinar as well. The next thing I'd like to do is remind you of the series of workshops that we've hosted on this topic. We started off with a kickoff event on December 9th of 2021, where we featured 3 community colleges and their work to award credit for credentials. Our colleagues at Jobs for the Future hosted 3 workshops for us that focused on institutional policy and how you can update your institutional policies to award credit for industry credentials or other credit as well. How you can think about aligning your coursework with credentials and to be able to award credit. In our workshop in August, they focused on the student experience and how you can gather the appropriate information from students to be able to award that credit and make sure that students and employers know about that. And then today, we're focusing more specifically on what we are planning to do on the Michigan Transfer Network to support you in the efforts to award credit for credentials. So let's review our goal. First, I always want to thank our funder, the Ascendium Education Group, who is providing financial support for this project and a variety of projects related to this portfolio of work. And then I'd like just for us to remind us of the big picture of our project at the MCCA. Many of you over the years have been involved in our work that has focused on guided pathways and transfer. But with that work, you'll remember that much of that support focused on, in many cases, our transfer programs, our AA and our AS, where students are typically seeking a bachelor's degree. And we saw a great opportunity to provide colleges with some support in their workforce programs. And of course, that looks a little bit different than it does with our transfer programs. We are supporting 4 strategies that focus on a strategic focus on program design. This work that awards credit for industry credentials. We recently signed 4 new transfer agreements, which will provide a pathway to the bachelor's degree for students who earn degrees in 529 different programs at 25 community colleges. And then we're working with a small group of people from across the state to develop some very targeted training resources that can help people that talk with students about career exploration, especially in workforce programs, to provide them with some additional training about those conversations. Today, we'll focus on strategy 2, but of course, we always have a lot of information about all of these strategies on the MCCA website. Before we jump into how the work that we're going to do, I'd like to extend a special thanks to a work group that Donna and I have been working with since about January that have helped us design the work that we're sharing with you today. So these folks who represent community colleges in large, medium, and small from all different corners of Michigan, as well as colleagues at the Michigan Department of Education and Jobs for the Future, have provided us with extremely helpful input and feedback on this work that we'll be able to share with you today. And we really couldn't have done this without their support. So thanks to those of you who have been part of that work group. I think if some of you have been on our workshops before, you've seen this slide. And this is really just level setting around what we're trying to do to award credit for industry credentials. Most community colleges are very familiar with awarding credit for various forms of alternative credit or credit for prior learning. AP and CLEP credit are very popular. The MCCA has been involved in a couple of projects that focus on how we can award credit for military experience. And this particular project is part of that ecosystem of credit for prior learning, but we're specifically focused on those students who have earned an industry credential. So I have found in talking with people about this that one of the best ways to talk about this is to start by showing you a few examples of what we mean. And I'll start with a credential, in this case, a certification that's awarded by the state of Michigan. If a student enrolls at Alpena Community College and they come to them with a commercial driver's license, that student can award credit, or that student can earn credit for UTT 206, which is Equipment Vehicle Operations. This is a required course in the Utility Tech program at Alpena. And if a student, the course prepares students for their CDL, but if they come with that already, they're able to earn those 2 credit hours in Equipment Vehicle Operations. Another example in a field that has a strong connection between what colleges prepare students for and industry credentials is in IT. And I'm showing you an example here of a CompTIA Network Plus credential. And if a student enrolled at Badenoch Community College in Escanaba, they could earn 4 credit hours for CNSS 130, which is Introduction to Networks. I also want to draw your attention to, it's not just industry credentials, but sometimes the state or the Department of Labor is the organization that issues the credential. And in this case, if you've earned a CNA from the state of Michigan and you enroll at Badenoch Community College, again, you can earn credit for Nursing 130. I also want to show you that you could actually earn a single credential and get credit for multiple courses. And in this example, the student has an LPN from the state of Michigan, and they would earn credit for 3 courses at Badenoch Community College. So we sometimes find in the relationship between credentials and credits that students, we have a many to one relationship, one to many, and we can even accommodate many credentials to many credits in that relationship when we reflect that in the transfer network. Another example here shows you at GRCC, if you have a Certified Fundamentals Pastry Cook certification from the American Culinary Federation, you can earn credit for CA 102, 111, and 112 at Grand Rapids Community College. And then we always like to end on one of our favorite credentials. In my work over the last several months in this project, I've enjoyed very much learning about the various different kinds of credentials out there. GRCC will award 2 credit hours for CA 243 if you are a certified specialist of wine. So that was one of the more interesting credentials I've seen as well. Okay, so I just wanted to open us up by showing you a few examples and kind of related to asking you in the chat to share that the relationship between the courses that you offer at your college and what credentials you might prepare students for as well. So we'll be coming back to that a couple of times throughout, but I find it helpful that to be able to show you some of those examples. Okay. So let's talk about the examples that I showed you. For those of you who are familiar with working with the Michigan Transfer Network, that the layout of what that looked like probably looked very familiar, because that's what the transfer network looks like if students are logging in to see how their courses transfer from one institution to another. So what I'd like to do now is just walk you through 6 steps of how community colleges will document how they award credit for these credentials. So those of you who are familiar with the transfer network, this page should look familiar if you're eligible to log into the secure site. So I'm going to log in as me. And then I get to a dashboard with a menu of all the different things that colleges and universities can do on the transfer network. And we'll tell you to click on the industry equivalencies in the bottom left corner here. Step 3 is for the college to create a new industry equivalency. So we'll click on that button here, and I'll get to a page that looks like this. I am pretending like I work at Delta College right now. And what I will do is enter the transferring credential information. And so if you can see on the slides here, I have a drop-down menu to select the provider. So that would be the Society of Wine Educators or Cisco or CompTIA. And then I would select the credential under here as well. And I also have a spot where I can tell students what the suggested documentation is. So what information do we need from the student to document that they have in fact earned this credential? Now, when we do these, when we document credit for courses from other institutions, we request a transcript. And that's obviously very common knowledge among transfer students that they'll need to submit their transcript. In this case, with industry credentials, we don't have a common way of documenting an industry credential. There's no industry standard for documenting industry credentials. And so colleges and universities that participate in this will have freedom to tell students what documentation they need. That's not standardized in any way. And so you'll just want to tell students what documentation they'll need to provide to your institution. In the bottom of this section, you'll notice that we can add transfer credential, and that is the button that you'll choose if you have more than one credential to add for this particular equivalency. So in the example that we provided with the LPN, well, that was a different example. If we had 2 different credentials here, let's say we had 2 different FANUC certifications, for example, and both of those equaled 1 class, then we would add both of those here. Let's move down the page then, and what we're seeing here is the information that you'll add about the course at your institution. So what course does the student earn credit for? You'll add the subject, the course title, and the number of credits. Those are the 4 required fields. Of course, very similar to other areas of the transfer network, you have the flexibility of awarding credit, general credit, or waived credit for that, that just like you can with coursework as well. And then just like you did with the industry credentials, you have the option of adding additional courses in here. You'll click save. And then immediately after that, you will be able to view the equivalency. And so the example that I'm showing here is at Delta College. If you have an OSHA 10 certification or credential, at Delta College, you can receive credit for MIT 118, safety practices and procedures. So that's what you'll see. And then that information is going to be available in the transfer network. I have added dozens of equivalencies to the transfer network using this process. And once I got my information organized about how, what credential it is and what credit we award, it's a very quick process, probably about a minute or 90 seconds to add each credential. So it's not an overwhelming amount of work, but there are a few steps to go through to be able to get that done. Okay, so that's how, those are some examples. And then I shared with you how you enter that information into the transfer network. And what I'd like to do now is transition over to a live demo of what students will see when they are, students and employers, advisors, anyone will see when they log into the, or when they go to mytransfer.org and they're looking for these equivalencies for industry credentials. So again, I bet a lot of people here are users of the network, and this page probably looks very familiar. We are undertaking a redesign of the website. This was launched in 2019, and so next spring, you'll see a refresh of the website so that we're targeting pages that we really want students to visit. But for now, what I'll do is go here to where it says earn credit for industry credentials. And I come to a page that looks like this. I'd also like to point out that you'll probably notice that big green bar at the top says development site. This isn't on the publicly available transfer network website yet. This is still in development, but I wanted to show you this today. Again, if you've ever looked up how a course transfers from one institution to another, this page probably looks very familiar because it has the same look and feel of how we do course-to-course equivalencies. And we can search by the sending provider, or we can search by the receiving institution. The first step I'm going to take is to search by the sending provider. And I'm going to clear my search. I did testing of this earlier. And I'd like to pick Cisco as the sending provider. And just like other areas of the transfer network, you'll notice that my results come up right away here. And so when I selected Cisco, I can see how Cisco CCNA 1 transfers to Delta College is CST 161. I can see how Cisco 101 transfers to Grand Rapids Community College as CIS 175. And then I can also see a many to one example here as well at GRCC. So we've got each of those things. I can click on details, and you'll see where I got my screenshots earlier that showed you the examples of the equivalencies, because that's what the details page looks like on the industry credentials page. I'd like to go back again. This is how you search by provider, and then you can also drill down by the specific credential, and you can even select a specific institution if you just want to see that one equivalency. I'd like to go back now and show you how we can search for courses by receiving institution. And in this case, I'd like to select Bay to Knott Community College. And I'll see at Bay, I see all of the industry credentials that I've added into the database here. So I have 4 CompTIA credentials, and I have 2 credentials from the state of Michigan included in here as well. So not only are you able to search by credential and see all of the institutions, you can search by institution and see all of the credentials as well. For those of you who might be just reviewing video or the slides. I wasn't sure if the live demo would work, but the internet held out for us. But I have a couple of screenshots in here that just showed you what I searched for as well, for those of you who maybe are just looking through the slides and listening. Okay, before we move on to next steps and implementation timeline, I want to pause and see if anyone has any questions. If you do, please raise your hand using your Zoom hand, or add those questions into the chat, and I'll give you a second to pull those questions together before we respond to them or move on. I see that Jill asked in the chat if these are examples from a publicly available database. I think I might have addressed this earlier. I was showing you the development site. They're not available right now. We'll cover that in the implementation timeline. But once we're implemented in 2023, all of that information will be on a publicly available site. So it's not an MCCA database just for colleges. It's in the same place that the public can look up information about transfer credits. All right, well, let's move on to our implementation timeline. I am working my way backwards in this timeline. So what I'd like to do is start at the bottom. So today, here we are, my Workforce Pathways workshop. So we're sharing this information with you today. If you or any of your colleagues are going to be at Trends next week, I'll have a session on Friday morning at Trends. And so for those of you who want to share that information with your colleagues, I'll share a lot of this information and some other information about this project as well. But please let people know if they'd like to attend Trends. Now I want to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of the timeline. So if you were noticing when I was walking through how you added industry credentials, you probably noticed that we have standardized, or we at MCCA, we identified the providers and the credentials, okay? One of the key pieces of information that we liked about what we can do with the MTN is that we can just search for Cisco. And when we do that search for Cisco, everybody shows up in the same way. When we've done reviews of other states who have these types of databases, somebody might spell Cisco CISCO. I don't know, Cisco probably has a long name for it as well that somebody might include. Somebody may make it all lowercase. And so it would make it very difficult to have standardized searches across institutions. So knowing that we wanted that to be standardized, we knew that we had to be responsible for adding the providers in the credentials. You don't have access to this. Most people at colleges don't have access to this, but we have a couple of pages, and here they are. We have pages that Donna and I maintain where we enter the provider information, and you saw on some of them that we had logos. That's really important, and the work group pointed out how important it is that students see that logo, because that logo is probably on their certification as well. We can also select the colors for each of the providers so that the look and feel looks similar to what they're probably used to on the provider's website. And then we also we add in those credentials. So for CompTIA, we add all the CompTIA credentials in there so that you have something to select from when you're going to award credit for that. Now, we've added a lot of providers and a lot of credentials, but we need your help to make sure that we've captured all of the providers and credentials that you need. So after I go through the timeline, we're going to engage in a little exercise so that you can provide us with some more information about the providers that you prepare students for their credentials. All right. We call that a soft deadline because you can continue to give us information about providers that you want to add after November 15th. This will be an ongoing process to add those providers, but we have a soft deadline of November 15th because we want to open up the system for colleges to report equivalencies. So the 1 through 6 step process that I walked you through. That will open on December 1st of 2022. Then throughout January, February, and March, we will provide you with support through working sessions that we'll schedule throughout the winter, spring term. You can get customized help from us to be able to enter those equivalencies, to drop in and ask questions. We will do a special session in January for Jenzabar and colleague institutions separately, probably, to answer questions and talk to some peer sharing about how you will manage this information in your SIS. So look forward to that in January. And then we have a soft deadline again of submitting, inputting your credentials. And the reason that we have that soft deadline is because then we can do some testing on our end to make sure that this is all going to work as we expect it to work. But you should continue to input your credentials and your equivalencies after that as well. We will go live with the site on April 17th of 2023 is our target date. And that's when we'll flip the switch on so that students and employers can do the search of those equivalencies. We'll give that a few weeks to test that out. It might be a little bit buggy at the beginning. We'll have a way for you to help us identify any bugs or issues that you see. And then starting in June and all the way through fall semester, we will do what we're calling more of a marketing launch, where we want to we'll do a lot of training, press releases. We'll put together marketing materials for colleges and universities to use to put up around campus for when fall semester starts. So all of that will be available starting in June. Any questions about the timeline? All right. Everybody's quiet, but I'm going to ask you for a little bit of help right now. Donna is going to put a link in the chat to a Padlet. And Padlet is a tool that allows all of us to share information at the same time. And what we want to know from you today is, what providers and credentials do your courses align with? So we're going to ask you to report those in this Padlet. So if you're watching this as a recording, please go ahead and click the link that's on this page. And what we need from you is to know who are the providers and what are the credentials so that we can populate these pages here that we have access to in the transfer network. Okay, so right now I'm going to go out to Padlet and I am going to walk you through how to do this. If you're on the call, I actually want you to do this now, would be great. So we can start gathering some of this information, and super helpful if you can give us any feedback on how we could make this easier or test it out. Okay. So in the first column here in green, I have the background. In the second column, I have instructions for how to do this. And then I have the providers organized by alphabetically. So, American Culinary Federation, and then F through J, K through O, P through T, and U through Z. So what you will need to do, and you should all have I see some people coming into the Padlet. You should have a plus sign above each of these columns. And if you click plus, you should be able to, a small box pops up in the bottom right corner, and you'll have something that says subject, and then it says write something incredible underneath there in the little box that you see here in the corner. You also might be able to pop that out into the middle of your screen. And what we would like you to do is add the providers and the credentials. So I'd like, and here's the tricky part, right? I asked you a little bit earlier, if you award credit for industry credentials, and in your introductions, and that's the information that that I want you to add into this area here as well. And you'll notice that I'm not asking you for institution specific information. That comes a little bit later. But we'd like to ask you to add some of these things now so that we're able to do that later. I noticed that, let me see if I can find, ooh, we've got some good ones here. Barb Walden from Kirtland, I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot. ASE was a provider that you referenced. What does ASE stand for?
Automotive Service Excellence.
And what is one of those credentials?
Okay, so I usually have a list in front of me, which I don't now, but I know they have a credential in brakes.
Yes. I know they have a credential in heating and air conditioning.
Yep, electrical, pretty much everything.
Yeah, all the parts of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you'll see I just added automotive service excellence, and I added the three things that Barb and I just talked about there. I click publish. And you'll see that showed up under A through E providers here. Don't worry too much. I see that somebody added several of the credentials for automotive service excellence right underneath, right at the same time I did, which is perfectly fine. Obviously, we know that people are going to duplicate these. But what I'd like to do now is I'm going to give you about 7 minutes to do this. And then we're going to come back together and finish up the workshop. In the last column here, I do have a column for questions where you can add questions. And this is really intended to be sort of like if you're in an LMS and you're teaching and you have that kind of question section, because you know everybody tends to ask the same question. If you want to put your questions in there, Donna and I can go back in and put our response in there as well. So I'm going to go on mute for a second and let you do that. The last thing that I'll mention is that is an optional step is to add a thumbs up. You should see a little teeny tiny thumbs up or thumbs down in here. And if your institution will award credit for that credential, just give me a little thumbs up there. This will give us a little bit of an indication of the extent to which this is widely used across the state. So if you can go ahead and do that, we will come back together at about 1:43.